I'd like to call a meeting to order, and let's make certain we have a quorum. I think we need, because of Zoom, we need each person to indicate their presence. So Nancy Crowley,
Yes, I'm here.
all right, and Liz Cobbs
Here.
and Kate Ryan
Hi, here.
and Joe Emmerich.
Here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. We might as well move to the approval of the minutes. And I see we've got two sets. We have those of December 7th, 2022 and December 14th. Now, Amy, I didn't take the time. Will Liz bring us up to date, or do we have how are we up to date in terms of our minutes?
I have one more step from November 30, and I was just waiting to hear back on those ones that we discussed. So I think with the holidays, they haven't been able to hear back yet, but that was on the the legal question.
Okay. Okay. So let's look at first of all, look at the minutes of December 7th, 2022. Are there any comments, edits, suggestions?
No.
I didn't. Did you send those out? You didn't send them, did you?
I sent it
Yes.
after, but I guess didn't get to you. You sent me the email.
Yeah,
before,
I
so
looked through. I got what I could off the website of the town, but I didn't receive your email with the packet.
Okay, the packet's on the website, but yeah, and I forwarded it to you after you sent that email.
Okay, so I can't get online in this room, so I'll have to either see that later, or if you have a copy, I could look at.
Okay, sure, I can print a copy of the packet, and I would also just suggest if you go in, even if it says that you're connected, just disconnect and reconnect, and it usually does work there.
This will be the first time, Amy.
Okay,
It's never been has never allowed me to connect. But this is the minutes that I wrote. Were there major
there were
changes?
some changes, so
Okay.
yeah. So do you want to not vote on them, or because you?
No, I think they have to be posted, right? So could you print them and
Yeah, no, that's what I'm
Okay.
working on printing them out.
yeah, it doesn't. It's. Maybe it's allowed. Let me see. Maybe it's now. Fingers crossed, 2023, new year, able to get on the internet. That would be good. Not connected. So. Bill, would it be, where am I talking to? Bill, would it be possible if we did the minutes at the end? Because I haven't had a
Sure.
chance. to
Sure,
review
that's an excellent suggestion. Let's move on then to the class and comp study update. This is item number 3 on our agenda. Progress to date and anticipated timeline for next steps.
Kelly, we're just at the class and comp study update, so if you wanted me to.
Well, I mean, the other thing we could do here is go on to the next item on the agenda item that would give Kelly a little chance to get settled. So why don't we do that? Why don't we go on to the agenda item 4, which is the continuing development of recommendations to the select board. First of all, being a new personnel board charge, which you have included in your packet. I'm not sure to what extent would be the best way to approach this. I can tell you that maybe a little bit of the backdrop here. I spent time looking at other towns' personnel charges. I went in and looked at the internet, what what kind of formats are there for committee charters. And I just, I probably looked at 20, 25 different samples, I guess. And so I came up with this particular format. So that's where this comes from. We're not going to find it any other place, but this I thought was at least a decent way to start to organize this particular topic and the chart. So I might as well sort of start. Maybe it's going to be easier for me to walk through this in some ways. I'm not going to read every single sentence, but a vision statement. It seemed that this is not a bad way to sort of set the tone. What is it that we're trying to, at a very high level, what are we trying to accomplish? And so that's where the genesis of this particular statement comes from. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts, comments. From my mind, this needs to be, the statement itself should be at a 20,000 foot level, and it should, in essence, sort of say, in general terms, what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Okay. Any, maybe I'll just move on to, unless anyone has any thoughts about, and the formatting obviously is subject to change. If those on the board do not like the approach or want to change it or whatever, that's clearly within, that's why we have a personnel board to make those changes. So I went on to purpose and scope, and this, I thought, this comes really pretty much from the past, and this is
Right.
that we're going to administer the bylaw, ensuring the personnel bylaw establishes an equitable and efficient system of personnel administration for Concord's non-union employees. And then I put parenthetically in, and I did spend some time thinking about whether I wanted to include that, but after I gave it some more thought, I said, yes, I wanted to make it clear pretty much at the beginning what was not, who was not included in this scope. And then I sort of added my wording here about in addition, the personnel board may serve in an advisory capacity to the town manager, HR director, select board, and any other entity the personnel board deems appropriate. And then I added this last sentence, which I thought was really important to essentially help to broaden and help to clarify what the personnel board should be doing. And I said the personnel board may pursue initiatives that supports and or clarifies the personnel bylaw or is consistent with strategic human resources matters that support the bylaw. I wanted to have it stated that we could pursue sort of our own thoughts based on our combined history and our combined knowledge about human resources in general and strategic human resources. And here was a way to try to articulate that it's a part of our charge to initiate these kind of efforts if that supports the personnel bylaw.
So Bill, just a process question here. So you had sent this out. We had only comments from one of the members in terms of written comments. I had said that when we had them, we could compile them or you could address them here. So I've got written comments from Liz, and I can put those up on the screen if you would like to be able to see those at the same time. Or if you want to get through all of yours, that's okay, I can wait. So I just was looking for which way you want to approach it.
Well, Liz, do you have any, what are your thoughts on how we should?
I'm not sure. I mean, this is a funny meeting since we're meeting right after vacations and everything. So I don't know if others need more time to, I mean, if Bill, if you walk through it and folks walk along
Yeah.
and then we, compare with the comments that I made, that's fine. It might be easier on Joe as a new member and so
Okay.
forth. What do you guys think? I'm fine either way.
Yeah, I think it would be great to just go through the whole thing. I had a few things here and there. I think it would just make sense if you went through it and then afterwards maybe took each small area and asked for
Okay.
any comments.
Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna go on to the Personnel Board Authority. And what I was doing here was trying to include a list, comprehensive list of where, starting with the Massachusetts General legislation, the MGL, and I've indicated which of the various chapters and sections I thought were pertinent to having a personnel board, and also as we get into the details about how a personnel board as a committee, what their procedures are, where that authority comes from. And then I wanted to add the fact that the board's authority is limited by provisions of the personnel bylaw. But I didn't see it necessary to articulate those limits since it's articulated in the personnel bylaw. Membership, personnel bylaw, I thought this is pretty simple, straightforward. 5 people appointed by the select board, and that there were specific exclusions for serving as a personnel board member that were specified in the personnel bylaw. I didn't see, again, it necessary to restate what those exclusions were, since they are already in the personnel bylaw. Then I went to board governance, and here I was trying to articulate what was important as a board in how we sort of do our job and how we should be structured. I start with the personnel board has no authority, decision-making authority. But as is stated in the bylaw, the town manager with the board does have authority for adopting policies and procedures. I thought it was important to get that stated in that first sentence. Meeting regularly and as necessary. 3 members are necessary for quorum. Consistent with the open meeting law, which obviously would allow for executive sessions under certain constraints. And there's a necessity as a board to state that we're going to elect leadership positions as specified in the personnel bylaw, and that modifications must be approved by the select board. So that was the board governance. And then I guess the heart of this is the activities, duties, and responsibilities. And you'll notice that probably the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets, we've seen previously. We've seen in existing documents, including the current personnel bylaw. But I wanted to add this last bullet about serving in an advisory capacity. Serving in an advisory capacity to the town manager, HR director, select board, and any other entity the personnel board deems appropriate. Furthermore, the personnel board may pursue initiatives that supports, clarifies the bylaw, consistent with the strategic human resources matters that pertain to the human resources administration in Concord. And I gave some examples here. I think there are others that I've noticed that I should be including, but I said recruiting and retention, benefits, infrastructure, career development, employee and management training. I should add in there benefits and service programs and disciplinary programs and safety and health. Those are additional ones that I would probably add into the for example. Then the next to last is our procedures, standard committee procedures. And this is how we come up with an agenda. This is who's responsible for gathering supporting agenda material. Also the responsibility of having it published. I indicated here as regards to a Zoom meeting, about a majority of the personnel board present at the meeting or in Zoom necessary for the approval of any motion. And that Zooms are certainly, meetings are, at least right now, permissible. The personnel board is to ensure publication of meeting minutes consistent with the open meeting law. The HR director is responsible. So these last 2 points, I think, are clearly new. But I was trying to include some of the thinking that we found in the personnel study task force, as well as just our own discussion at various personnel board meetings, that we need greater visibility and we need more transparency. So I say here that HR director is responsible for supporting the personnel board, which is exactly what happens now, and will collaborate with the personnel board in identifying relevant employee summary data and a schedule for that, for the distribution of this data to the personnel board. So I'm not listing what that information should be, because I think it's the information requirement, or the information what we'd like should come from the personnel board. And obviously we need to ensure that the HR director, Amy, is fully aware of what and our purpose. We need, I believe, to have relevant information, and that's why that word is relevant employee summary data. Now, the last short, I guess, paragraph sentence: the town manager provides advice, assistance, and information to the personnel board as it may require to discharge its functions, including, consistent with privacy laws, access to all facts, figures, records, and other information pertaining to town department and positions. And then the last thing is termination of membership. I talked about normal rotation, and as well as I noticed in some of the material in the personnel task force that they had from other towns, that there was actually there was a statement about that the select board can, in fact, remove a member from the personnel board. In fact, probably from any board. So that's I guess some of clearly the thinking. Sort of open now for thoughts and suggestions, and sort of where you'd like to go from here.
Can I start just for the minutes, Bill, with a quick clarification? At the end of the activities, duties, and responsibilities, it ends with employee and management training, et cetera, but you said safety and health, and I didn't quite catch the other two that you were adding in. Benefits and something?
Well, I wrote here benefits and service programs,
Okay.
disciplinary and appeal process.
Okay,
That really, those thoughts need to be really wordsmith, but at least, yes, thanks, Liz. That at least gets it down in the minutes.
okay, thanks.
So I think what we should do is Nancy, you said you had some thoughts?
I went through it 2 or 3 times. I was trying to compare it to the administrative code and the bylaws and pull out anything that I could find. The first vision statement, I had thought that the town of Concord, I was just throw something in like supports a bylaw that promotes the ability to recruit. I know the personnel policies and procedures come before that, but it was just a way of wording it a little differently to put the bylaw and then personnel policies and procedures after it. And my other one was the purpose and scope. I felt like you needed to have so on the 1, 2, 3, on the second sentence, when you begin the except, because I think that's really important, putting in those that are an exception to this. But when you got down to the 4th line, employees of the school department, there was a comma, but you didn't put a parentheses around it because all town departments and positions would be separate from that. So,
I guess, right.
you know what I mean? So it was just a matter of punctuation.
Right.
Um,
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think that's doing a quick read here.
Yeah, but I did think, when I looked at it, that it was a very good overview of everything. I didn't really, I went through each area.
All right.
So my only question is not really for this, but just in general, the question is, do we need to have a personal board charge as well as a bylaw? Of course, we need the bylaw. We need personnel policies and procedures. Do we really need this charge? Can everything that's in the charge eventually be maybe looked at to make sure it's in the bylaw or personnel policies and procedures? I'm just throwing that out because I felt it a little confusing with so much information scattered over 3 different items.
Okay, that's a
That's
worthy point.
that was just me.
I'm gonna go on to who else has maybe either a thought about what Nancy has said or your own thinking, or as you've listened to my presentation.
So I guess I'll go next. I agree with Nancy. I think I tried to articulate this last time. I feel like it is confusing to have 2 separate documents. For me, it's confusing as to which one takes precedent. Do we go to the bylaw? Do we go to the administrative code? And I feel like we could wrap this into the personnel bylaw, and then this code is no longer needed. And I mean, if we do this administrative code piece, this charge, it should be very broad so that when the bylaw is updated, they don't conflict. I don't think we should have very specific information in the charge. That should be in the bylaw, so it's clear to residents, to staff, to employees where to go when they need to understand what the personnel board is and does.
Okay. We've got Joe, Liz, your thoughts?
I don't know enough to have a point of view on whether
Okay,
there should
that's
be a
fair.
charge and a bylaw, but the question or comment I would have, I think, as wherever this sits, the recruiting and retaining employees, I think, is an important point beyond just policy and procedure. And the part that I think is starting to come in here that you've added a little bit, Bill, is like the employee experience, or whether people are engaged or actually like working for the town, and whether or not this board has any influence or say or would add any value there, or whether we're looking at this purely from more what I would call traditional pay and benefits lens versus whether the environment's inclusive and whether people actually look at the town of Concord as a viable employment opportunity compared to other towns or other private employers and things of that nature. So you started to get there with like this infrastructure training, career development. Whether it's in the notes or somewhere, I guess it's a thought to capture or discuss where that sits with us, or whether that resides with the town manager and kind of Amy and her group. I don't really know, but I think it's an important piece, because to do if our charge is to attract and retain people, I think that's as important, or maybe even more important to some people, than what they're paid and what their benefits are.
I think that's a good point. Excellent point, Joe. I think, from my vantage point, that is really the genesis or the purpose for that last bullet under the activities, duties, and responsibilities. So I see the personnel board having a opportunity to influence, review, to those particular items that, in fact, I think lend themselves to having the ability to recruit and retain employees. And it's clearly something that I believe is sort of been suggested, not only by citizens in the town, but also by the Personnel Study Task Force, that we have a bigger role to play here and to contribute to the town than just simply comp and benefits. Liz, maybe it's your turn to, since I haven't seen, well, I don't know, Amy, can you put up the comments from Liz?
Well, while she's doing that, can you hear me well enough online?
I can,
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was sketchy earlier, but it's better now, Nancy?
yes.
yes,
Yeah,
much better, much better.
All right, I was yelling earlier, maybe I overwhelmed the thing. So first off, I think it's worth, before getting into the nitty gritty stuff that I wrote, Kate, I thought your comment was a good one. You know, we've got policies and a bylaw. The reason to have something beyond the bylaw, I would say, is that the bylaw can only be updated at town meeting.
Mhm.
And so we need some way to be more proactive during the year. So if it's this, or if it's in the policies, I think wherever we cover everything, as long as we're all in agreement that everything's covered, then I'm not in love with having all of the documents either, right? So that we stay consistent. So that's a, agreement there. And then I thought that last conversation between Joe and Bill was really, I support that as well. If we're going beyond comp and benefits, and Bill, your emphasis is that we should be, then maybe we all take a deeper look at that last bullet in the activities section before the end of the conversation. And I guess with that, then I'll just go through my comments that maybe you guys can see now online. Can you, the track changes I couldn't get to show, so I used only comments on the side. And like Nancy, I was wondering where the beginning of the paren and the end of the paren and the purpose and scope was. So I mean, I don't have to read out, I guess, all the comments I made. You can see them, right? Do you have them? You guys don't have them either. Okay, so okay. So I guess the first one, I just took the parentheses out. I didn't know that we needed it, but Nancy, you brought in a new dynamic telling that it might have been that the parentheses wasn't at the end.
Well, it shouldn't be at the end, because all town departments and positions shall be subject to the provisions of the personnel bylaw.
Yeah.
It's just, it ends with the employees of the school department. That's
And then-
why, yeah.
The original copy of the paren was, so you were saying it's just in the wrong place, and I was saying, do we need it at all?
No,
And
it
then
was in the
another-
wrong, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, that's grammatical in my view. I'm not too worried about it, and it makes sense what you did, Nancy. So that's not a big deal for me. But I do wonder about employees of the school department, because if you look at the recommended changes to the charge from the PSTF report, they did have some comments on that, right? What is my comment here? I can't follow them either on the sides. They're so weird. This group, when paid, were included by the PSTF report under the personnel board charge. Right? And that was employees with personal contracts, I think. And then employees of the school department. Oh, no, that's the other way around. So that the comment number 3 is this group employees with personnel contracts was specifically called out under the PSTF work as a group that should be covered by the personnel board. And I'd like to better understand this category and what would be the exception there, because that was in their recommendations to be included. So those were the two groups. There's some minor group within employees of the school department that they'd singled out, as well as the employees with personal contracts. So what
Should we
do we
talk
do?
about that now, or do you want to go through the rest? I don't know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that the personnel board can be sort of oversee personal employment contracts, because those are between the town and the individual. So, I mean, I don't know that that should be in our charge.
Right now, the bylaw specifically excludes both
Right,
of these
right.
groups, so then there'd be the question of changing the bylaw or, but I. I think
But
that's a good
legally, I'm
question.
not sure that the personnel board can.
Contract
Yeah,
and the town manager has
Right.
authority for.
right. Yeah, that's mine.
So I'd still like to better understand those. Do you want to do you have any comments, Carrie?
I'm Carrie LaFleur. We didn't.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I know you were on Zoom last week, I don't know like that. So, I would agree with Kate. There's only a handful of employees who are allowed to have contracts under Mass General Law. And those contracts set out the terms of employment between the appointing authority and the individual. So I think it would be very difficult for this board to have a role there. We certainly can look into that a little bit further, maybe if we understood what type of role the board would be looking for there. And then the school employees, they are just not under, they are, for all intents and purposes, a separate organization. They are under the school committee, the superintendent. There is no authority that anybody on the town side of the equation would have relative to school. I don't remember that comment about school employees. Why not?
So under appendix Q in the reports, it's added in specifically employees with personal employment contracts in red writing. So I'm assuming that was their ad. I know nothing more than that.
Yeah.
Right. And is it when there's a problem, if there's a adjudication, then it would come to this group? I can imagine you're right. If you hire a contractor for a short period of time, we may never know that happens, right? I mean, that's not really, that's a employee
Right.
short-term contract, but if there's a problem with the contract, is that why they put that in? And maybe
Yeah.
that's something for the task force to
We certainly
answer.
could follow up with the task force too, to find out if they can provide any additional information. So just to give you context, on the town side, the only employees who are allowed to have personal contracts are the town manager, the town accountant, and in certain circumstances, the police chief and the fire chief. The police chief here does have a personal contract, the fire chief doesn't. And that, and the library director, but the library director here does not have a personal contract either. So it's very limited.
I think their language here is actually, this I don't disagree with it. They added the personal contracts to those who are an exception to what the personnel board would have a role in. I think that's the task force, and I'm just,
Positions were approved by town meeting, with the exception of.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're
All right,
good clarifications here.
I should move on.
Yes, please.
Right, okay.
We all should regain the minutia.
So the next major is still under purpose and scope, and I was worried about this the second paragraph, Bill. In addition, the personnel board may serve in advisory capacity to the town manager, HR director, select board, and any other entity that the personnel board deem appropriate. And I thought that's a bit too big for us, because it sounds like we can choose to give advice to any group that we choose without any request from the town manager or the select board that appoints us. And I thought it actually should be where they deem it appropriate and request of us anymore. But I don't know what your thinking there was. I just wanted to.
That was one of my questions as well. I agree with your point on it. If that is overreaching, or if there's a different way to word that to get at the intent, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think, my intent was that we may be approached by another board to respond to an issue. And since I can't think of an example, I mean, I'm really, I don't think we need to have anything in there that is that is in question, perhaps really not necessary. But my thinking was we might be approached by another board
But
to
wouldn't this
deal
select
with.
points us to agree with that request?
Say again?
Wouldn't the select board have to agree with the request from the other board?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it's what we should
Think
do.
so.
Just I think that should just be eliminated.
Okay, all right, or we could say, or other jobs as assigned by the select board or something like that, just so that we're not looking like we're renegades.
I would just delete it.
Well,
That's a
it's
good point.
twice in there, in fact. In that last bullet on the activities section, it's the same thing, and any other entity, the personnel
Yes.
board seems appropriate.
Yes. Yep. That
Okay,
should go.
I do think it could, your point is well taken, Phil, that it could be, we are asked to do other things, and we should have some and et cetera kind of approach so that we're lenient to that, amenable to that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an alternative, and et cetera. That's certainly, maybe that's a good, again, what I'm thinking is, we're not going to approve anything tonight. What we're doing is we're providing feedback, comments. This needs to be sort of refreshed, and that, at a future meeting, I think we'll be much better prepared to feel comfortable as to what we want to do with the document, if anything. So.
And Phil, it's thanks to you taking the time to do this over the holidays. So thank you, because this helped us to have something to dialogue about. So under membership, the Board of Selectmen was changed to Select Board in most of the PSTF report recommendations. So I just said, why don't we do the same under membership? Members are expected to have the previous relevant human resource experience. There was a lot more in the report as well. But is that where, Bill, you said, let's just leave that to the bylaws, or?
Well, I was trying to be general and a little vague, because I was afraid that getting into trying to provide specific examples, we wouldn't even be able to think of all the possibilities. I thought it made some sense to have relevant, because if somebody has experience just entering data into a computer, numbers, and it has to be people numbers, I wasn't really sure how helpful that would be to being a member of the personnel board. So, and again, relevant is a very general kind of qualifying word that leaves a fair amount of discretion, which I don't have a problem with, to the select board in terms of who they feel is appropriate to be a member of the personnel board.
That sounds fine. It was just why the details are in or out. I wasn't clear on the rationale behind it. So that for further discussion later, that's fine. Given what you just said though, Bill, I wrote down the word leadership, previous relevant leadership in human resource, is something about leadership, because I think that's what's so valuable about all the folks that are on this board, is everybody's really, as you said, not just creating the data, but analyzing the data and working with that data to set policies for different institutions. I think that's what's so valuable about each person having different experiences here. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a good point. I would say that the word leadership, I think, could exclude some folks that, in fact, could be extremely beneficial. For example, if there was an individual who was doing hiring and recruiting for either a company or a municipality, but they weren't really, a manager, they weren't a director, they weren't somebody who we think of in a leadership. That individual, though, because of his or her experience dealing with recruiting and retention, might be a very valuable member. So that's where I don't think that leadership, the word leadership needs to be included in this sentence.
Okay, I didn't put such a fine point on the term, I guess, so
Oh,
I thought more like leadership skills or, because what you just described to me is somebody who's leading and making decisions about careers for others. Because they're interviewing and they're, deciding to hire or not, but, well, right now it just seems a bit limited to me, so maybe for further discussion
Sure.
on that point, is that okay?
I think
I don't
that's
wanna
great.
drag out tonight.
So my just a piece of information that board members in the past often were prior select board members or prior finance committee members. That may or may not have had, well, depending how you're going to define whether it's relevant HR, but that was the way we were. The select board obviously did those items, but those were the people that they were able to identify to attract to the board in the past.
So not looking at careers outside of the town volunteer work.
Well, it wasn't it exclusively. It was that there often was trouble attracting others to come into these roles, and those were people that they felt did contribute to the board. But no, not exclusively. We did things like send out recruiting letters to people with any kind of HR experience and weren't getting anyone interested. So that was just a way that they filled it. I'm not judging where we go from the future. I'm just saying that was often.
Did you just say that people were solicited to come and volunteer, and that's?
Yeah, we went through the street listing and careers list and sent letters just saying, hey, would you like to serve? We were just having trouble filling the positions.
Oh.
And so we found anybody that was listed as a career of that type and sent them a direct mailing. That was some years ago, but it was just different things through the years trying to get people to get engaged.
I joined at such a great time, right? Because you guys joined right after, and we've got 2 longer serving members who know what they're doing. So I'm just surprised, about that. But okay, all right. So I have other comments. So why don't I whip through them? Activities, duties, and responsibilities. Okay, so the first one I'm remembering, sorry, but the PSTF report, letter G, outlines the kind of information or data we require and should be included here. Bill, I think you also referenced that your last bullet there was trying to get at that. Or no, that was the broader, right? The broader thing, but there are a couple of bullets where you try to mention that we'll need more information, right?
Right.
And I think that should be more of a discussion. So maybe, as we, try to get more wordsmithing done here to better understand what kind of information and what, I think what you had done, Bill, early when you were explaining it, was saying that we can work with the HR department to understand the cadence of the data, right? So that we're not saying, because at some point we were talking about once a month, and I remember Kate not thinking that was feasible. But that we will need more information to understand what we're looking at, right?
Right, and you I like your word cadence, and that this is a collaborative type of effort to come to some agreement as to what and how often. And I think the personnel board needs to have a good logical position in terms of why they believe that this is important, the particular data is important, and also the timing. So and we on the personnel board need to do essentially the same work, try to agree as to what we believe would be helpful and consistent with the administration of the personnel bylaw.
Sounds good. And then for my last comment was, you had already addressed it a bit, Bill, with the et cetera at the end of the last bullet. And I think I was trying to get at non-unionized town employee meetings. And in that case, how many should we look at and have a little bit more concrete details around meetings with employees for the personnel board, so we can be clear about what is the role for us to play. And it kind of feeds into, Joe, your comments about sort of the culture. You know, how are we involved in retaining and making it an attractive place to come to work? And I think that that's something we all need to discuss a bit more. Because how can we do that? So far, and my first meeting was the end of March, early April. So far, I haven't seen that we are in a position to do that, right? With what we've done in the meetings. And so I'd like to, I think that's a good discussion to have, like, how do we help in that way?
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's really, that's an area that needs to be specifically, I think, identified in a separate bullet, because of the importance that has been given to communication by this task force, our own personnel board, us, as well as, consistent reinforcement is from the town manager and the HR director that, this communication is an area that needs some attention, and I think it probably deserves its own bullet.
Just taking notes, so I'll get these in minutes. That's all, but that's it for me.
Okay. Let's see. And
So-
Liz, I'm sure you've been able to capture all of the input, correct?
Everything.
That's good. That's good.
So, Bill, is it okay if I just wanted to make one comment about the activities, duties, and responsibilities, if that's
Sure.
okay?
Sure.
So I guess part of what I said earlier is having sort of a charge versus a bylaw, and having too much specificity in the charge, I think can be sort of confusing and problematic. And then I'm concerned that we're going to end up, 5-10 years from now in the place that we're in now, where we have a charge that is way out of date compared to where our bylaw is, and we're just going to be right back where we started. And so I feel that the activities, duties, and responsibilities should be more, I guess, streamlined, and maybe even just point to the bylaw and say activities, duties, responsibilities as outlined in the bylaw. And that way, when they're changed at town meeting, which they will be periodically, this doesn't become out of date automatically. My other, I guess, comment is I want to be really clear about roles and responsibilities for the personnel board versus the town manager versus HR and the select board. And I'm concerned that this last bullet may sort of muddy the waters a little bit in terms of taking initiatives, in all of these various human resources matters that really fall under the authority of the town manager and the HR manager or director. So I have some concerns about the language and whether it should be included.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a good point. One of the things here that, and I know somewhat of it, I mean, it seems to me it would be helpful, Kate, if you could take some time and reword or wordsmith, so we have something specific to look at. Is that?
Yeah, I work on that. I'm happy to do that.
The first part of it says serving in an advisory capacity too. So that kind of prefaces everything that comes after, right?
Right.
Which I think for me makes it clear. And I just say that now, Kate, because if you're going to wordsmith, I just wanted to note that for you.
No, I saw that too. I guess I've seen sort of in my own experience, boards and committees working in an advisory role, almost kind of push a particular type of agenda into I'm not articulating this well. I feel like the roles of town manager versus personnel board and select board need to be really clearly articulated, and I don't think they are here. And I'm not sure that we should have this much detail, because I think the detail is going to get us in sort of downstream, going to be problematic with our bylaw, because our bylaw does map all of that out. So I don't understand why we have to do it twice.
Well, I think,
Again,
let me just comment about that, because I think that one of our purposes as a personnel board is to be able to communicate to all of the constituents, including, citizens, including employees, and I think it's important to have a document that's a summary document. Now, obviously, summary, it's a question perhaps of how much detail, but I don't think it's terribly helpful to expect that employees or citizens have to read the personnel bylaw in order to figure out what it is this group does or doesn't do. So I think there is value. And again, maybe it's just, it goes back to what's the detail, but I think there's value, a communication value that a document like this provides. And so I really think it's important to have something that that guides not only the personnel board to some extent, but also, also makes it clear as to what at a top level, what are we doing? What are we supposed to do? Anyway, this is all good discussion, good conversation, and as I said earlier, we're going to have at least a few more sessions in all likelihood to be able to fine tune this, where we're all comfortable that whatever our final product is that we support as a personnel board, because this does have to go to the select board for its review and comments, approval, so forth. All right, do we have we exhausted the personnel board's input here, comments?
How would we
'Cause I
call it
wonder-
round?
Yeah.
Maybe, Terry?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Great. So, first of all, thank you, Bill. This is such an excellent start, and we're really, really pleased to see the board working on this. It's been a long time coming, so great progress on this. There's a couple of real minor points. The format might have to be slightly changed because most of our charges have these certain things. They're almost the same as what you've got. One thing is A, background, B, purpose, C, membership, D, duties and responsibilities. You get this A, B, C, D thing. And so it's very minor. And another minor thing is we probably have to add in section E, which is other considerations, that you're going to comply with all the mass general laws like open meeting law and quorum and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of boilerplate that goes in all of them. And then finally, I do agree with, I couldn't see who made the comment. I think it's Katie. Not to be too specific in certain places, like you don't want to say how many meetings there's going to be every year. That's too specific. And the other thing that you were just looking at, for example, about serving in an advisory capacity, that's really excellent. In my opinion, I really think you should be doing that. But then there's a part that says, furthermore, to take initiatives.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think that might be over the line, that you might not be able to take those initiatives unless the town manager or the select board asks you to. So it's a real fine balance to get this exactly right. But I think that you're off to a really excellent start. Thanks to everybody who's working on this.
all right, thank you, Terry. I think those are good things points to keep in mind. Why don't we open it up to any citizen comments that pertain to the conversation we're having regarding this draft of a new personnel board charge? Do we have any citizens who want to comment? Okay, I don't see any.
Royce Powell has just raised his hand.
Oh, okay. Mr. Howell.
Oh, hi. I didn't hear you recognize me. Thank you very much. I do think it's a great start that you're working on the charter. I'm sorry, the charge. And I think it's important that you do take the time to work on it over a period of time for input. I wanted to suggest that it's also probably very useful to work on it as you, in combination with the bylaw. My understanding from some of the work that's gone before is that there are elements maybe that were in the bylaw that might be easier to deal with on an ongoing basis if they were maybe moved out of the bylaw and put into the charge. Remember, the charge is basically a memorandum of understanding or an operating agreement between the personnel board and the select board that kind of outlines what's going to happen on an ongoing basis and doesn't require town meeting action to change. So I think there was a prior comment that I slightly disagree with, in the sense that it would be better to, I'm sorry, I forgot to start my video. It would be better to go err on the side of taking things out of the bylaw, because anything that is not in the bylaw can be updated, for example, through a dialogue between the personnel board and the select board with citizen input, rather than taking town meeting time around that. I also think it's a real opportunity for the select board to outline things that they might want the personnel board to do on a regular basis, recognizing, of course, that the personnel board is in the charter and may have its own things independent. Some of the things that I previously suggested are input to the town manager's evaluation with respect to the dimension of personnel management. In other words, tracking that, or eventually when the DEI work kind of concludes or becomes normalized, maybe tracking progress on initiatives like DEI could be elements that could be added to the charter and might exist for a period of time and reflect that. If you go back to the Town Governance Study Committee recommendations, they actually recommended that the board charges be updated fairly regularly, which in Concord usually translates to every 5 years or so. So think of it as a working understanding of how this personnel board meets those needs that are more outlined at a higher level in the personnel bylaw. Those are my general comments. I might have some specific ones at a future meeting, but thank you for taking it on. I think it's a great process you've started.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Any other citizen comments? I don't see any. Amy, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I think Liz has captured all of the very fine points.
I hope so.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. It's a work in progress, and we'll need to reflect a little on our conversation tonight. I guess that the next question has to do with who is going to, how do we incorporate the conversation into this document, which is right now is just a draft? How do you typically do that?
I can assist. If you've got the Word version, I can edit it, or a member of the board could do it, whichever you prefer.
Well, I mean, we've got two things going on. We've got some specific specific suggestions and certainly ones that I think make good sense. Then we have others that are sort of comments. And
Why
those,
don't I, as part of the minutes, I could put the comments and specific suggestions incorporated, and then we can review it
okay,
and
okay.
make sure I caught everything as
Okay.
part of the minutes, and then it can be publicly
Okay,
shared.
I like that. Okay, let's do that.
So it'll
Let's
be
do
the
that.
first run in the minutes. Okay.
It might be just to make certain, are you all comfortable with how we're approaching this particular activity, this project? Are you all how are you feeling about what it is we're doing and how we're doing it? And if you have any suggestions for any improvements as we go forward, as the chair, I'm clearly willing to, entertain whatever other thoughts you might have. So if anyone has any suggestions about as we move ahead in this process of making
Well, I
it
guess-
better, more efficient. Yes,
So I was thinking when Mark Howell spoke that, probably Terry, through you, we would need to show a draft before we go back for a public meeting with the select board and interact with the select board and get their comments, because it's our charge, but it's actually in agreement with them.
yes,
That's what I understood from Mark's comments. So
Yes.
Terry, we'd want to get it to you at some point, and you, I don't know how you would circulate it with the select board, or you would take that responsibility to add in select board comments or something.
Right, I kind of had the same question. Generally, by the time a charge comes to the select board, it's ready to be adopted, but not always. Sometimes we need 3 or 4 meetings, but the more ready it can be, the better. I think in this case, though, maybe we want to circulate an early draft and see if we do get some other comments from the select board. For example, that format thing I said, I don't really care, but somebody else on the board might really want every single charge to follow that exact format. And that's not a very big change, but it's the kind of thing, or, they might not want you to be serving in an advisory capacity. Maybe that's going to be a big discussion. So I hope that doesn't happen. I think you should be serving in an advisory capacity. I'm just using it as an example. So I don't know how you want to proceed. I could check with Matt, the chair, but at some point, a draft should go to the board, and maybe we're not ready for that yet. But this is a pretty good draft. And maybe when you put in these changes from this meeting, maybe then it's time to go to the select board for comment and still, call it draft 2 or something. It's really up to you how you want to do it.
all right, thank you. I mean, my gut sense is we should take the comments, let Liz go ahead and do her magic, and that we create another round of discussion with the personnel board, and we continue to fine tune, and that perhaps after the next session, or maybe the one after that, we'll be ready to go to the, send it to the select board just for their ideas, their thoughts.
Great, that's great.
Okay, so I think this doesn't need to have a vote. I think it's just an understanding that let's go ahead, let Liz combine the material from tonight's discussion, and that we then at our next meeting take another conversation having to do with draft number 2. And that will, and at the end of that discussion, we'll see where we're at. Okay. We've had the comments from the citizens. In the agenda, there's a point here about the authority of the town manager and personnel board for classification, compensation. What I wanted to have us start to think about is really, and there is this, I guess it's on the very last page of the packet. And this really goes back to, I think, a constant theme that has been expressed by the personnel board and most, if not all, of its members, in which, to what extent does the personnel board need to continue to present at town meeting the various items of reclassification. And perhaps there is a better way to approach this. And you can see here in this is Article 7. This goes back to 2021, I guess. And this is where this article back then said the town manager shall adopt and may amend rules and regulations establishing what efficient administration town employees. So this was felt to be important to get the rubber stamping out of the personnel board when in fact the personnel board doesn't have the expertise or knowledge about how some of these classifications come about in the first place. So we don't have the opportunity to micromanage these reclassifications, in my opinion. So I'm not being very clear, I apologize, but if in fact we're going to consider changing the personnel bylaw so that the town manager is entrusted with the administration of the town's personnel system, then that will have a significant effect on the personnel bylaw itself, as well as the personnel charge. So it seems to me that what we have to do at some point in time is thoroughly review what that means to have the town manager be entrusted. What terms and conditions might be necessary in order for this to be approved by the town citizens? Or is this even a good idea in the first place? To have the town manager be more involved or be charged with the administration of the town's personnel system. From my reading of various personnel charges, that the town manager does have this in certain instances in certain towns. Not all the towns, for sure, but the current person or the previous personnel board have clearly indicated that that it's just made no sense to continue to have the personnel board rubber stamp these classification decisions. So what I'd like to do maybe for the next meeting is to spend a little time, and we'll probably call upon Amy and her experience and background to talk a little bit more about why Article 7 was thought to be appropriate for a town meeting. And remember, eventually Article 7 never was moved, but I still think it's a topic that's important for the personnel board to think about. Any thoughts, comments, from anybody?
So I'm not so clear on numbers. So you said Article 7. Is that the one that led to the PSTF report, the PSTF
Yes.
being formed?
Yes, yes.
All right, so I see others also spinning material to find it. So I see it as Appendix H in the report from the task force. Is that right?
It's the last page
Yeah,
of
it's the last page, yeah.
the printed materials there that I gave you tonight. That's what he was referring to.
Okay,
So and originally, it was an Article 6 in 2020. That's when the personnel board first headed this into correction shortly before COVID. And so it was moving forward, the discussion was happening in 2020. We had a public hearing with some comments from citizens. And then COVID hit, and there was basically a request not to continue. Even the personnel board didn't meet for quite a while too, so all discussions sort of stopped then. Then when the personnel board was able to resume meeting, it was near the end of 2020, came up again. And then in the following year, same language was put forth, but now called Article 7. In the following year, it was numbered differently. And then the version that you have here was under discussion for edits that were being proposed to be made by a motion. So the black print was what was printed in the warrant. Then there was discussion about making some edits based on feedback that was received in motion. The moderator had concerns about whether this was in the scope of the article. And then the other discussions happened. Other people had concerns about whether this was the right direction and had been fully vetted, and that ultimately led to the task force appointment. I think that's
So
my
if you go,
interpretation. I mean,
just
yeah.
to add to that,
Yeah.
Amy, then, and taking from the task force, there are two people, Anita Techley and Mark Howell, who's here with us tonight. Anita's comment is the personnel board, and this was when it was the first one, I think, no, when it was Article 7, is proposing we strike the current bylaw and grant authority to the town manager to establish and manage a personnel system with no public oversight. So that you can imagine where the comments go from there. And then with Mr. Howell, Article 7 represents no progress whatsoever toward establishing the purpose and portfolio of the personnel board. Is basically the same as proposed the last year. As written, it eliminates the personnel board's role in oversight by making it purely advisory to the town manager. That struck me too, because we're talking about the charge and saying advisory is a good role. So, I mean, I'm trying to understand the history of all this here, and it doesn't, I'm a little concerned that I'm too new to really catch up with all of this, where there was at least two serious concerns that led to the PSTF being formed in not doing this. So, you know, so Nancy, did you want to?
Yeah, I was on on the board during all of that. And basically what it came down to is that basically everything that we did do, which was very small amount, what we did as a personnel board, was really going to be completely taken away. So we wouldn't be doing the class and comp, and we wouldn't have anything else. So we would actually be a board that it sort of came down to, would we even be a board? Do we need any more than a few members? And what were we really going to do? Would a couple of things come before us in the course of the year? And that it was quite interesting. The town was really truly so against it, because it was putting all the power into the town manager, and basically the board in many ways was being depleted. So it didn't go as number 6, and it certainly didn't go as number 7, and it will never go if you plan on number 8. I mean, it's just not, it's not something that I think we want to see. I think the personal board wants to do what we're doing, and we want to even do more in the town to help out the different departments as we are asked. So yes, it was quite an upheaval, and it was pretty negative. So I remember all of that. Right, Amy? Am I pretty much on?
Right, I would just add that it was the personnel board that, in a meeting at the beginning of 2020, they voted that there had been discussion that, did it make sense to continue all this classification and compensation work? And the question was, could we eliminate the personnel board? And so this came back as a proposal, as no, the answer was, no, you can't eliminate the personnel board, but here's a different approach to the personnel board that could be considered for an advisory role, which is consistent with, and Kate, you can tell me, but I think that's part of the discussions that have been happening in other towns
Yeah.
too. So it was along those lines of where personnel boards are going, but the only way to eliminate the personnel board would be a charter change, and that's not where the board was at that time.
All right. I think, this is, I hope, helpful to the other personnel board committee members, history and what's taken place. It's hard to digest everything in just a few minutes here, and I'm sure we're going to have to repeat, perhaps repeat everything, but I think
So,
it-
come back around to your introduction to this
Yeah.
page. I'm not quite clear what did you want us to take, what did you want us to do with this?
well, I think the conversation, and this was the background to that conversation, is whether or not, or to what extent, should the town manager be entrusted with the administration of the personnel system. That's the topic. Now, there's certainly one response is should have no involvement, or there is total involvement, or there's involvement with certain constraints and certain public disclosures.
Is that
So-
for the town manager, no involvement, or for the personnel board?
You'll have to restate, please.
Sorry, I spoke over.
So you said, I think you were saying, should the personnel board have no involvement, or were you saying, should the town manager have no involvement?
Town manager. Or the question really is, to what extent should the town manager have, if any, dealing with the administration of the town's personnel system? That, I think, is the question.
So I think,
So, go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
We receive everything from the town, like the job descriptions that we've reviewed have come from the town manager, right? So we serve the town manager and the select board. So I'm a little confused now with the whole
Here's
thing.
how I understand it. So the personnel board has had authority for what's called the classification and compensation system, administration of that piece. And when we talk about compensation, that does include paid leave benefits. There are other things that fall under a personnel bylaw. So it's anything in the personnel bylaw. And that has been the role of the personnel board. And that comes out of, history through the charter and mass general laws and all of that. The town manager is the appointing authority, is the manager, is the chief executive officer, and gets to make many, many decisions regarding the management of the town. The question that kept coming up is the role of the personnel board being responsible for class and comp in the bylaw. Is that effective? Is that still the right role for a personnel board? And through the discussions before, the thought was, no, it doesn't make sense to have the board involved in class and comp. So we'll recommend, originally, as I said, it was recommend that there isn't a personnel board, and then it turned to let's change this to an advisory role. And at the same time, see if that advisory role can get involved in more things that would be more helpful to the town than just focusing on the bylaw and the class and comp. And so this proposal actually talks about some concepts and things that weren't in the bylaw, but it's saying that the town manager is clarifying the town manager is responsible for all of these things, and the personnel board can get involved. Now, again, there were different opinions on it, whether that was the right thing, that's a whole other discussion. But this here, what all came out of a discussion of not should the town manager be involved, but should the personnel board be getting involved in classification and compensation. That's how I understood it. Bill, did I capture that right from your
Yeah, no,
recollection?
that's much, you did much better than I did, so. Well, I think we're gonna have to come back to this, because I don't think I clearly haven't set it up right in terms of what it is, and I think we as a personnel board should be having a conversation about. Nancy and I are the only two who have had been involved at a time when the personnel board was certainly felt it was only rubber stamping and it really didn't serve the purpose. I think we've come a long ways with the Personnel Study Task Force and with much more involvement by the select board, town manager, HR. I mean, I think we really are starting to have a purpose. And I think the personnel charge, in my mind, is an embodiment of that. So what I believe we need to do is I need to perhaps frame what is the conversation should be, what should be the conversation next. And I'll spend a little time trying to put something down in writing and perhaps make it much clearer than it is now. So that's what I'll do. Any other thoughts before we come to a conclusion? Oh, we've got to do the minutes.
Another thing too.
Class and comp study update.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and then in the classic comp study, right? So Kelly, are you able to give us an update?
Yes, if I may. Kelly Huber, HR management analyst and interim assistant town manager. Here working with Amy very intensely on our review and analysis of the job analysis questionnaires. We've met with at least, I think we have at least 6 or 7 or 8 department heads that we've been meeting with on a regular basis to really just make sure that we fully understand the new job evaluation process and the methodology that's been shared with us by GovHR. We are taking time to, cross the T's and dot the I's, making sure that we are applying the methodology in a standard manner between various departments. So we are, checking our understanding of what the criteria means, how the scoring is laid out. We're identifying areas where there may be questions. We're going back to GovHR to clarify. We have been really talking with a lot of the department heads about current positions, where they are now and how they've grown over time. We want to make sure that that is taken into consideration with the ratings. We are effectively at the tail end of that. We're hoping, actually, we have a very solid deadline of this Friday to meet with GovHR and to basically submit our comments to them after this very thorough review, and to basically ensure that we have interpreted and utilized that tool appropriately. We're establishing internal equity, not just within the organization, but we took it a step farther and met with the department heads so that we can ensure that their department, that their inequity between their positions was adequate. And then we had to take a step back and then filter that through. So it's been an intensive process, but I think very valuable. I think that if you were to speak with any of the department heads, that I would hope that they would give you some very positive feedback about the exercise. It's also very helpful that this is the system that we will be using moving forward. And Amy and I have had the ability to work one-on-one with GovHR to develop that system, to fully understand it, and perhaps at some point make some recommendations on how that can be best utilized for us. So we're almost at the end of that phase. We are going, in the meantime, they've also been compiling all the market data, and they are working on the compensation plan. So they will take the compensation plan as a draft. They'll be overlaying that onto our classification results. And they'll be coming up, I think it will take at least 2 to 3 weeks for that compensation / classification recommendation. That, of course, will also need a very thorough review. We'll be meeting with the town manager to make sure that there aren't any questions. There'll be some further analysis to make sure that the system works for us. Finally, we have begun to identify and collect data with respect to our benefits package. So some of that might be very basic. They're collecting that from a lot of our manuals or the personnel manuals from other towns. And they're also going to be, sending out a survey to ask people basically for some feedback about many, some innovative benefits programs that they may already have in other communities, just to see how we sort of stack up against the competition, if you will. So our municipal benchmark communities, there's 28. And so there's a lot of information, a lot of moving parts, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel at this point. And I just can tell you that there's been a lot of work and time and effort, not just by Amy and I and the town manager, but by all of our department heads. I think it's going to be a very good outcome. And our goal, of course, is to hopefully smooth the way so that our implementation plan, that all of this work can lead into a good communication plan, and that we can, ultimately be able to review this plan and implement it in a way that will be effective and efficient for us in Concord. And we'll be able to have a good process by which we can allow an employee review and a description of all of those findings when the final report comes out by GovHR. Now, to that point, though, we might see the framework for a compensation and classification plan. The final report probably will not come out till a little bit later. There are other findings, but what we're trying to do right now is prioritize and compartmentalize that classification compensation plan so that we can incorporate that within the annual town meeting review and the drafting of those articles. So a lot of this is really closely tied together. And that's why the work of this board has been really, the weekly meetings, it was very intense, but very worthwhile for us to be able to get to this point and to be able to have this opportunity to explain to you what's going on behind the scenes and how we're going to get to that report and to that final report that GovHR will produce for the town. I will be working with Amy on a more detailed timeline with our milestones from here out in, because really that will be determined by our handing over of the scoring analysis results and feedback. And we'll be asking GovHR to give us more detail about the output that they will give back to us so that we can time all of our actions appropriately and make sure that everything will be received in time for integration into the annual town meeting publications. Amy, I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
Any questions from the personnel board?
I have a question or two, just curiosity. Does the town have an overarching compensation philosophy? So I've seen things like plus or minus 10% of benchmark data or some wider ranges on occasion to start to frame in for people like what they should expect. Or is it, we're going to pay people basically at 50th percentile of whether you're using base salary. I don't know if there's any incentives or any other fringe comp or not. I found that to be helpful, at least in places that I work, because it level sets people to what's the appropriate range, when you ship benchmark data, because people always don't think it's enough, right? It's human nature. So that was one thing, if you may have already thought about it or may already be integrated into this. And then the other thing that I've seen with stuff like this is, I don't know if it would work for public service or for government, but certain roles we would pay a premium to, like if they're uber critical to the town. So there's some factor of, are these really hard to fill positions, or if left unopened or challenging to fill, we might pay at the 60th percentile or some premium to the market because we know these roles need to be paid that way. They're just general questions that I don't know if they need to be answered in this, but maybe GovHR is helping with some of those things. Just feedback, I guess, or observations of doing compensation stuff in the past.
Any comments? I can comment real quickly on, so in the past, the target philosophy was around the 85th percentile benchmark data. That's how we set them. And that will need to be a discussion again, as this is set. So that that has come up, where do we want to be now, and how does that work with the benefits and all of that. That's a general rule. There were a few things like the light plant always has some special challenges that we've tried to address. We also have to be careful in terms of the paying certain positions of premium because they're hard to fill. We've had to work at changing our approach to that, given the Massachusetts equal pay law. So that in of itself isn't a legally justified reason to do it. So we have to be sure that we have that whether they're comparable positions or not. Yeah. So we're kind of relooking some of the things that we were doing just for that reason. We've changed in the last few years. And then the other thing with the compensation philosophy and talking about a percentile, I've often found that that's misunderstood. You know, that's a hard thing for employees to understand. So I think it would be great to be talking with everybody, you know, more publicly about what that means and what it doesn't mean.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's still variable, right? So normally.
it is, and then there's, again, when you combine that they're benchmark positions, so it doesn't mean that every position that we're not looking at the market data for every position, and some aren't going to be at the 85th percentile because of the market issues, and we've got to balance that with internal equity. So it's not this exact thing that everybody thinks, you know, it's not 100%, there's science, you know, but it's science.
All right. Thank you.
Some of those things you guys are already thinking of are in place and would need to be looked at in the future. So that's good.
Right, and that's part of getting to the next stage of this project.
Yeah, and that will come with the recommendations of the HR with their final report. That is a part of the overall scope of work that we've asked them to provide to us at the end of this process.
All right, any other comments from members of the Personnel Board? My only comment has to do with, I think it would really be helpful to have written down a timeline of what are the deliverables, what are the goals that are being established, so that we have some really as a good way to track whether we're on track, where the timeline is being met, or we understand if it's not being met, how can we catch up? I mean, I think the more specific we get here, in my opinion, the better we're going to have at meeting whatever the end goal is.
Great
Because
point, Bill. I captured that in the minutes. I just want to say I agree because the deadlines are so tight with the town meeting materials. So
right.
if
Yeah.
they could get us a timeline, do you think?
Yeah, we were talking with Joellen about that like 2 weeks ago, around the time of our last meeting. We've been working on that and we're fitting it into the town meeting process. It's just that within this period that we weren't quite there yet, but we agree. I think that's my understanding. So and we do expect to provide that.
Okay, thank you. Can we set a goal, or can we have this for the next meeting, Amy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's appreciated. Thank you. Any other comments from anyone who hasn't said? Okay.
Pardon me, I just wanted to make one note. One of the reasons that this has taken a little bit longer than our original scope is because, and we knew this going in, that this is a very large project with a very large number of employees. So I don't want to give people the impression that we're behind schedule because of any other factor, except that we are doing this project in the very best way that we know how, with the information that we've been allowed to collect. In most cases, we might have had a shorter timeline with not as a robust and comprehensive approach. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in the translation, as we're talking about 190 positions, very large. Our benchmark positions are much larger, maybe as much as twice as large as most communities. And we are asking them for a huge amount of information, of course, with our assistance. But I just wanted to sort of put a, nice word. GovHR has been doing a wonderful job, and we are trying to support them, and we understand that the scope of this project really has crept up, but to our advantage, and that we are hoping that these, few extra weeks will make that much of a difference as we look to implement this project, implement the program and the new classification grid. Because if you remember, there's 10 different grids, pay grids out there. We're trying to combine them into one system, and that doesn't come easy. So I just want to reassure you that we are in good hands, but it's a lot of work. And we are moving forward, and at our next meeting, we will have a very definitive timeline with the light at the end of the tunnel from GovHR. And they're doing a fabulous job, and I just want to also thank all the department heads and our staff who's really helped to support this project. Yeah, as well, you members of the personnel board. So thank you.
Well, that's an excellent summary, Kelly. Thank you. I think we recognize the amount of work that is required, because I think for the most part, members of the personnel board have personally been in their careers have had to do this kind of work. I think there, and I don't want to minimize the fact that we appreciate all of the work that not only the town has exhibited, but also the fact that the managers, supervisors, and so forth are participating in this. I guess I'm just trying to, we have sort of a deadline with the town meeting, and we have two alternatives. If we're able to have and be ready for one, which is a new system in place, then we have that warrant article it's in our pocket. Otherwise, we have a fallback position. So I'm just, I think it's helpful when you're planning, and it's helpful for expectations that there's, reasonable goals, and setting those are important. It's a discipline, but it's important to accomplishing the objective. Okay, let's look at the minutes, if we could. We've got the minutes of the 7th of December, 2022. Are there any comments or suggestions?
I thought that was fine. I'd make a motion that we accept the minutes
All right, there's a motion
of the meeting on December 7th, 2022.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, second, Kate, thank you. So all in favor, and because it's Zoom, we're gonna have to get the verbal. So Nancy,
Aye.
okay,
Yes.
and Bill is an aye. And then the president in the townhouse, we've got Kate
aye.
and Joe
Yes.
and Liz.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. So let's move on to the minutes of December 14th.
I see it, like, I ended a sentence without a period. I'm not sure it was the end of a sentence.
They're always typos.
Yeah. Sorry.
And Liz, you get 10 typos a year. So we've just taken one away yet. You have 9 to go.
Makes me nervous. How am I gonna do this year?
22.
Okay, all right, I'll go with Joe's assessment there.
All
So we
right,
have the
so
14th as well, right?
yes, then I'm going to need a motion to, or after any comments, suggestions, changes and so forth on the 14th. All right, if there's none, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the minutes from December 14th.
2022. Thank you, Kate. Is there a
2022,
second?
sorry.
Yeah, I'll second if
All right,
no one else
Nancy, thank
does.
you. So all in favor, Nancy Crowley,
Yes.
okay, Liz Cobbs,
Yes.
Joe Emmerich,
Yes.
and Kate Ryan,
Yes,
and Bill Marachek. Yes. Okay.
And Liz, I want you to know that I give you 100 errors a month. You got that?
But what, I guess I like to set this, we have to set up the high bar. So really Liz only has 9 left.
Well, those are just little things. There's no biggies that she makes.
No, there's not. There's absolutely not.
The last meeting of the year was right the day before I think I went away, so I didn't do that one yet, and now tonight's. So I'll try to speed up, but I'm out of town again from tomorrow through Tuesday, so it's not gonna be, are we meeting every week now, or?
No, the next meeting is the 18th.
The 18th? Okay, I can catch up by then.
Amy, just come, that third Wednesday is is a meeting that I cannot get out of. So, unfortunately, to tell you the truth, today I listened to the 21st minutes. It was well over 2 hours, and here I am tonight. It's not the same as being at a meeting. So if there's any way, I know that week is busy. The 17th is the town meeting. I have a meeting on the 18th. It's a condo board, my condo board, and we we have part of the meeting with the residents and the other, of course, is executive. So I have to be present. The 19th, I am available. I don't know if there's any way it can be changed. But if it can, it would be great. If it can't, I'll have to deal with it.
Can't change the special town meeting. We can't do it on that date.
On the
19th, Thursday.
I mean, I think Nancy, you told me that it's always that.
It's the third Wednesday.
I'm not sure, when we made the schedule, it was based on the members we had at the time. I don't know how many times we've ended up booking it for the third Wednesday. Is that an ongoing issue, or is it just that month? Oh, it looks like. Okay,
It's ongoing. Yeah, it's a monthly. It's the third Wednesday of the month. Yeah.
Okay, but the personnel board schedule wasn't, we just altered it because this time, like for.
So in February, we're on the 8th, in other
Yes,
words.
thank you.
Okay.
The 8th and at the 8th on March, so the other thing would be to put it up in a different week, if that was.
January 11 is difficult because I get back the day before, so I won't have time to do the minutes then. But is there anything that's time sensitive that we couldn't put it off till the 25th?
The other suggestion, and it may not even work, but our meeting is like 6:30, so I have to, 6:15 get on.
To do
The
ours
problem
early?
is, your personal board meetings are very long, so I don't want to have to be there and then have to leave. But so I had thought doing one earlier, but people are still working. So I don't know. Whatever you can do would.
Well, why don't we, Amy, why don't we do this? Can you send out an availability for January? And we can see if there's what other dates could work. I mean, the one thing we have obviously is that we have 5 people, but it'd be
That's
nice
right.
for everybody to
Right.
be able to participate. I fully support that. But I think in terms of sitting here tonight and trying to figure this out, I think if Amy could send out a email asking for people's availability in January, I think that might be a more efficient way
And
to do
is
it.
it, you said that Joellen from GovHR is available that week.
Well, she'll be in town but she can still be available via Zoom at another time, so it's not.
Okay.
Okay. Amy, are we on agreement that you'll do a email asking for people's availability in January?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Unless there is, we've already had public comment. On the other hand, if there is anyone out there who is interested in speaking, we're an inclusive group, so certainly happy to entertain any other citizens in terms of comments. I don't see any, so why don't we move to adjournment? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
second.
So all in favor, Dancy? Yes?
Aye.
and-
Yes.
And Joe?
Terry, were you trying to speak before the meeting concludes?
Nope.
Okay,
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to-
In the motion, yes.
so we have a motion to adjourn the meeting and a second. And Joe, you're,
Yes.
okay, and Kate
Yes.
and Liz
Yes.
and Bill, yes. Thank you all so much.
All right, great.
Really a
Thank
good
you.
discussion.